Brad Treliving has assumed the role of general manager. He's sitting in the chair because he has been tasked with changing the playoff results for the Toronto Maple Leafs. So the one big question, has Brad Treliving done enough to help the Leafs prepare for a deeper run in the playoffs?
Craig, we might not agree on this one, but I think he absolutely has done enough to set the Leafs up to go deeper in the playoffs, because sometimes doing a lot means not doing that much at all. So we'll start with, what has he done? He's gotten Austin Matthews under contract for the foreseeable future. And he also hasn't traded away William Nylander or any member of the core four that he was going to be able to trade. I think that establishes a belief in who the Toronto Maple Leafs are at the core, that they can then build around the edges to make them as good as they can possibly be. But make no mistake, they won a round last year, and yes, the second round didn't go the way that they wanted to. They could return the exact same kind of team and already get through a deeper playoff run than they did last year. So I think returning the identity of a very successful team is important. And then you start tinkering around the edges with trying to change a little bit maybe of the identity, of the style, of the personality of some of those peripheral parts, and try to make yourselves better. So what do? They go and get Tyler Bertuzzi, kind of abrasive player that can play with some skill, had a very good playoff. They go get Max Domi. We know that name very well. I've known Max since he was 2 years old, skating around the rink when I was playing for Toronto all those years ago. Abrasive player, could play with some skill, also coming off a really good playoff. They go get Ryan Reeves, undoubtedly the toughest and loudest player in the NHL when it comes to fighting and volume of his voice. And they're trying to change the personality. But I think maintaining who they are at the core while working around the edges was a smart and calculated decision that has the Leafs well positioned heading into the season.
Brad Treliving is not going to be just content. He's going to give himself an opportunity to watch this team. I agree in the belief in the core. There's every reason to believe in the core. Listen, I will look at it real simply. You can doubt them. I'll take my chances with them. And I think that Brad Treliving has established that very well. I think the goaltending is really strong. Ilya Samsonov, Joseph Woll is ready to be a real significant player in the net for the Toronto Maple Leafs. And I think that's really important. You know, when you talk about the edges and you're looking at trying to solidify your team, strengthen it in areas, they don't need strengthening at the core. They need it at the edges. And this gives Brad Treliving an opportunity to see how his team performs, to see what works, and to see what he wants to see a little bit better in certain areas. There's time for him to work at that as he watches the team, as they progress through the season. Listen, we're not going to disagree on this. They're going to be a 100-point-plus team like they were in the last number of years. They're that good. The level of play in the Eastern Conference from other teams, down a little bit. So the opportunity for them to move forward, I think, is there. But Brad is not going to just sit and hope. That is not his personality. He is going to try to get this team into a position where they have a better chance to contend and go deeper in the playoffs. So, yes, he's done some nice things, including not succumbing to trading William Nylander, a brilliant offensive player and a real important player for the Leafs. But he will also look at making sure that, like, if there's an area of the team being a little bit stronger on the blue line, being a little bit bigger, being a little bit harder, he is going to explore all those opportunities. Brad leaves no stone unturned. And I think that's really important for the Leafs as they try to contend deeper in the playoffs and ultimately for the Stanley Cup.
Conveniently, we talked about the forwards. We like them. We talked about the goaltending. We like them. We didn't really get into the defense because I think that is the one area, if you're going to be critical and point to a weakness about a deep 4-round, 2-month run, you might think, is the defense stout enough? Are they big enough? Do they have that sort of style of player, one or two of them, that can augment what the other guys bring? And I think that's where Brad Treliving will spend his time looking throughout the year. Either can they develop it with internally, or can they have to go outside at the deadline and bring it in? I will say this. To me, one of the real wild card for the Toronto Maple Leafs and their success this season could be John Klingberg. Because John Klingberg in Dallas had been a very good player. John Klingberg last year, not good at all. If he can get back to somewhere closer to Dallas than what he was last year, all of a sudden, there's some interesting pieces that can help move the puck up and be more effective than I think some of people might perceive them to be. But make no mistake, at some point this year, there'll be changes on the blue line, and the defense core heading into the playoffs will probably look different than it does today. But even as is, the Toronto Maple Leafs will still be one of the top teams in the Eastern Conference and a threat to go deep in the playoffs.
Brad has shown patience. He's reinforced a belief in the core, but ultimately he's brought here to get this team deeper in the playoffs. He's done some really good things. He's not finished.